Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Are we live?
We're live.
Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to Sundays with Steadyworth.
Steadyworth.
Yes, do you want
Tonight
to
we're talking about?
We are talking about... What are we talking about tonight? Tonight we are talking about, should I pay off debt or invest first? That is the topic of tonight. And, you know, sometimes people wonder, like, hey, am I getting behind investing or should I tackle this debt? I've been told I need to be debt free. We're going to be just going through all of those questions. And of course, if you have questions about this, feel free to put them in the chat. As we kick off, I just wanted to say that we've been looking at YouTube analytics, and over 80% of the people who watch our videos are not subscribed. So if you're watching this video and you're getting some value from it, please make sure you subscribe. We would greatly appreciate your support on the Steadyworth channel. So with that, let's get kicked off.
Yeah, let's get kicked off. So Gabe, when we talk to anyone or we work with clients or potential clients, often what we hear is, what should I do first with my money? Right. And we're going to glaze over the goals conversation, because that's usually what we say, and get into something that's, more tactical, which is debt versus investing. And so do you have let me pull up. I think a lot of people think, when they think debt versus investing, they think all debt is bad debt, or there's a certain kind of good debt. Do you think there's such a thing as good debt?
I mean, I think that I would label a debt can be good debt if you're using it to help grow something. You know, you might take out a loan for your business. I would consider that good debt. Some people would consider a mortgage good debt because it's connected to an asset. And so, I mean, I feel like, I would label good debt as any type of debt you're using to make an investment into something. And so it's like, so if you're buying a house and you take out a mortgage, it's connected to the underlying property. I mean, if you're investing in a coaching program, it's the debt, and you go into debt doing it, it's related to the underlying education that you're about to get so that you could use that money to make some money. Student loans at this point is arguable about good debt. That, like, yes, you do get a college education. I don't know at this point the validity of the college educations that people are receiving versus the types of jobs. Because I mean, I do know people now who are getting great jobs without a college education. So, but it's like almost going to university in America has become like a rite of passage, and it's just part of like what you do when your age is 18 to 22 type thing. We're not going to make this conversation about that, but I would say good debt is generally connected to, if you go into debt, it's going to give you a return for doing it. So any type of debt that will give you a return. And I don't mean just an emotional return like, hey, I went to the mall, there was a sale, I didn't have money to buy, this purse or this pair of jeans or this pair of shoes, but it made me feel really good, and I get, an emotional return on that because, yeah, that I wouldn't consider that good debt. Good debt is like connected to like a true asset.
Yeah, and before we were chatting live, we were prepping for this, and we were trying to think of like a more personal story of having to balance this decision between investing and paying off debt. And so I want to kind of even we didn't have like something that we felt like was
Well,
super.
I think that, we've worked with one client who specifically had to focus on this, and that we weren't not going to say any names just because we want to let them keep their anonymity or their,
Yeah,
whatever the proper word is. But I think when you're looking at, should you pay off debt or invest first, one of the really important things to look at is, what's your income level. Like, with the type of money you have coming in, this client actually happened to have a very solid income, and so they were able to pay off debt and invest. I think, one of the things that they did is that, even though, and when I say they're paying off debt, I mean like they're paying like 3-4 grand towards their debt a month. And when they were investing, they were still putting money towards their, started putting some into like an individual brokerage account and a retirement account. But I think, it also worked because they had an income that allowed them to do that. I think it becomes a lot more complicated when maybe somebody has a tighter income and they have a tighter discretionary spend. So by this person spending 3-4 grand towards debt a month, that meant like, that was kind of like their big kind of like vacation money or whatever projects or hobby money that they may want to do for the year was going towards this debt. And the amount of money that they were putting into their investment account was very small in comparison. Maybe they were
right.
putting, 300-400 a month in, maybe 500 a month, but 500 still is not, is 10%, barely a little bit over 10% of when they're putting, well, I guess it's maybe 10-15% if you're going 3-4 grand a month, however the splits are. But you get what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
500 a month investing is not as big of a push when we're looking at 3-4 grand that's going towards the debt each month. And so I think, it's really important to look at, one, how much money do you have coming in, and how much money can you allocate towards both, if you're trying to do both? Or does it make sense that, because I would say if somebody had a smaller income, or if they had a lot of debt, a lot, it might make more sense to just, have everything going in one direction. So maybe just start paying off the debt, depending on if that were their goal. Also, what's the interest rate on the debt? Is the interest rate 2%, 3%, 5%, 18%? Because, you also want to look at, hey, the point of investing is to make money, but how much is this debt costing me? And so, if you are in debt, and, and the debt's costing you $500 a month in interest, what investments do you have that are making you $500 a month in interest? Possibly Bitcoin. I don't know, but
Right.
in growth potential. But, so that is also something to think about.
So, in making a decision between investing debt or paying off debt, I mean, it sounds like there's a couple different things that someone might want to consider. One, how much debt do you actually have? Like, what is that number?
Right.
And
And
then
what
what
is
is
the
the
interest rate
interest
connected to that number?
rate connected to that number? And then, so how much is that debt costing you versus how much you would be making investing your money? And I think the third thing that you mentioned, which wasn't necessarily outlined specifically, was how much income are you bringing in a month, and what does that look like in relation to your budget or some of your other fixed expenses, and how can you kind of sort those numbers out based on that? So if you're unclear on what your budget is or how much you're actually tracking, making some of these decisions might be a little bit difficult.
Right. And so, generally we say it's like, when you set financial goals, and if you need help setting those, we have other YouTube videos where we talk about those in detail. But the point is that generally you don't really want to work on more than 3 things at once. And then once you're working on 3 goals, you don't want to make sure they're not like 3 conflicting goals. So it's like, and a conflicting goal could be paying off debt and saving for a down payment on a house all at the same time, because they're, it's like, hey, I'm trying to put this money to stack so that I can have this down payment. And I'm also trying to pay off this debt. And I'm talking about, so if let's say you're in $10,000 worth of debt, would just use a number like that. You could be in more, could be in less. But then if you think about saving for a down payment on a house, I mean, if an average house is $350,000, depending on where you live at, I mean, I'm initially from California, and you could barely bury somebody for 350. I mean, not really, but it's, yeah. So you think if you're putting down 10%, you need to at least save what's that, $35,000. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have $10,000 in debt, it could make sense to pay off that 10 before you try to start stacking 35, because they're kind of, fighting. Those two goals are kind of fighting against themselves. So, I would say, when you're setting goals, you want to make sure that everything is kind of going in the same direction. Now, when you think about paying off debt, or possibly, I think everything is also about balance too. So you could be paying off debt. And Dave Ramsey would not like that I tell you this, but he will not like this. But if you're paying off debt and you got a good amount of debt and that you're paying off, and you want to go on a vacation that's within reason, not like a crazy one, not like you're spending 10 grand on vacation, but you can go on one that's not crazy. I would say, hey, you probably go on it, because, when you were on this finance journey, it is a journey. It is a long journey. And the way that you keep people engaged on this thing is you got to build in some sort of fun. When people do not have fun for a long amount of time, I've seen that they end up blowing a gasket and then just have a total breakdown and then go straight off the rails. It takes it takes a certain amount of person just to be able to go for years and years and years with no fun. So even this one client who was paying off this debt, investing, he was still, he would go and take some trips here and there, take his wife, his family places, just because, hey, like they're still living life at the same time. And I think, one thing that we're constantly saying, and if you watch this show, you're going to get that we say here at Steadyworth, is we're always talking about how can you live a life that you're excited about today while living within your means and saving for a financially responsible future. And so
Yeah.
it's like, if you're not excited about today, we're not on the right track.
Yeah. So, I love what you're saying, because I think even you and I have fallen into this trap as well. Like we were just talking about this in terms of just starting a business, investing our money in the business, paying our bills, doing all this, also maintaining some level of sanity, like being able to just let ourselves kind of veer into that fun or have a little bit of a break, and vacation is really important. That's not necessarily what this is about, but one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about this, and I think this can be very overwhelming for people because of like the lack of literacy that we have, financial literacy that we have in America. And like, where do people get stuck with this question?
Get stuck with what?
Yeah, like taking action. Like, where do people get stuck? Is it the needing to have clarity about what the numbers are, needing to know the exact right thing to do? Like, where do people get stuck? Is it just not knowing what to do, so people stall, avoid, or?
I don't know if people get stuck on the investing versus, paying off debt. I think people get stuck in their finances sometimes just because they're like, hey, I don't want to make a mistake. And so then I just decide not to do anything.
Mhm.
I feel like that's the bigger one where I see people get stuck. It's like, hey, I don't know what to do, so I'll just do nothing. And maybe the stuck part is that, since they decide to do nothing, they're not investing into their education, which could be something as simple as reading a book, start to listen to some podcasts and just start to, kind of figure out some things that resonate with them.
Well, I'm just thinking about myself 6 years ago. I was, working a regular job. I was operating from this mindset of I'm, not making enough. I didn't want my bank account to go below a certain level. And so the idea of paying off debt and or investing was kind of not necessarily wasn't even a question, but it was a little bit farther outside of where I was even comfortable asking, and so if someone does have maybe that mindset barrier or has a little bit of a debt but is interested in investing, like where would you suggest someone starts?
I mean, I would definitely say like, hey, if you have some debt and you want to invest, if you're working a job and your job has a company sponsored 401k, I would recommend that you definitely, go ahead and put some money into that 401k, and the amount would be at least do the minimum to make sure that you get the match. Like if your company doesn't match, you can ask HR, ask your HR person. A lot of times the companies do, a bit of a match, maybe it's 3%, 2% of what you put in, but I definitely do enough to make sure that they're matching, because that's free money that's getting put on, that they're giving out, that you don't want to leave that on the board. And so I feel like, that is one great way to start investing. And it's like you really won't feel it in your paycheck. I remember like when I got, kind of like one of my first jobs, or one of my first jobs in finance, and I was I started contributing. It was like $100 a check to my 401k, and it's like, and since it was pre-tax, I only saw like, if I want to say like a $45 difference between what my after tax would have been if I hadn't have done the like basically my paycheck was only about $45-50 less than what it would have been if I had have just not done the $100 into my 401k. And so it just, I didn't even feel it. And so, and it was great to just start, so it's just $200 a month. And looking back, I wish I would have just been like, yo, I'm gonna start doing $200 a check, because I would probably wouldn't have felt that either, because expenses were low at the time. But so I would say that would be a great place to get started, is make sure you're contributing to your company sponsored retirement plan. Also, another thing, if you haven't, make sure you have an emergency fund, just because you want to have some money if something comes up, such as you have a flat tire or your car battery dies or something, because depending on how you get to work, of course, you want to make sure that your transportation is in good working order to get you there if something comes up with it, so that you can keep making your money. And so, having an emergency fund. And I'm not here to bash on Dave Ramsey's today. I know he talks about having at least $1,000. I don't know that his $1,000 emergency fund has been cost adjusted for inflation, because he's been using that number for many years at this point. So I would say aim for 3 to 6 months of hard expenses, and that could be a lot of money. And so, aim for 1 month to get started. That'll get you
Yeah.
going. 1 month of hard expenses. Aim for a half a month.
Yeah.
Aim for, one month of rent, or 1 month of your mortgage. Pick anywhere to start.
Okay, so that's like the investing piece, right? Like, so investing savings. In terms of if someone had some level of like debt that was overwhelming to them, how would you recommend that they kind of tackle that, or make a plan to pay that down
Yeah.
while doing these other things as well?
If you have an overwhelming amount of debt, I would say, the first thing I would ask is there a way to get it into with a lower interest rate? Because, that's the thing, is that they make all this money off of interest off of you. And that's what makes it hard. And I would also, so that I would first start with that. Like, hey, is there any way to get a cheaper interest rate connected to it, so more of your money's going towards the principal when you're paying on it? And then, I mean, there is no magic to it. At some point, you just have to buckle down and start paying it. And one of the things might, but when we talk about investing versus paying off debt, let's say you have a lot of debt and you're like, okay, I want to pay this off. One thing that you might want to invest in before you pay off the debt is like, hey, is there something that I can invest in to up my skills so that I can make more money, and then I can pay off the debt faster? Because, because if, like, let's say you have a certain level of skill, so then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go, I'm working at whatever job, and then I'm going to work nights and weekends at Starbucks or something like that. Like, you're not going to be able to pay off any big debt like that. It would be better for you to, up your skills so that you can get a higher paying job. Or, Starbucks might not be a good one. Uber would be a good one. That's what people like to do. It's like, I'm going to drive Uber on the side to make some more money. And, depending on where you live at and what you have going on, that could make you some more money. That also could have you very exhausted, for even your main job. So my question would be, is what would it take to up your skills so that you could get 3 rungs up at your job and get up 3 more pay boosts? And then you're paying off money with, just the money that you're already making. And then if you have a side job that's related to the work that you already do, something that you're already an expert in, and you're charging more on the side to do it. So, that would be one way I would say of tackling debt. Because at the end of the day, when you start tackling debt, It's really, you got to have the income and you're putting the money towards it. So, and of course, the stronger the income you have, the faster it will go.
Yeah, you're making me think of back in the day when I was working at my as a consultant, and then I got the job at Salesforce, and I basically doubled my income, and I was carrying some debt then and just paying it off slowly. I wasn't paying the full principal every month for a variety of different reasons, but I think once I got that pay boost, I paid the whole thing in full right away and never thought about it again. And then my goal from that point forward was to use the credit card and then pay it off at the end. So it started to kind of just be my new habit or way of doing things. But yeah, that helped. Increasing income helped a lot in that sense. But I
Yeah,
had a low level amount of credit card debt at that point. So
absolutely. And I feel like just sometimes these small side hustles can really be a distraction to, your main thing, unless it's related to your main thing. Like I have a good friend who is an attorney and they work like in compliance for a city, but then, on the side, they do, legal work for whatever. I won't get into the details of it, but the point being is like, okay, now, that's an apples to apples side hustle, because it's like it's something that's in their skill set already and they're
yeah,
leveraging it, and it's not taking away from what they're doing at their primary job. Whereas, when you have some of these side hustles that aren't related to what you do and is not fully related to your full skill set, it's like, why don't you just up your skill set at your main thing, focus on
yeah,
that first. You'll be able to see a bigger return just in what you're doing day to day,
right.
which will be much better.
From my understanding, he was doing that side hustle to pay down debt. Was he not?
Yeah, he was pay down
Some of
debt
that.
and have more money for sure. But yeah, he was definitely doing it, doing a combination of both.
Yeah, so sometimes that's a strategy in and of itself is like, hey, I want to pay down this. And I've heard other stories of people doing that as well. Like they've worked a second job, not necessarily recommending it. It's just an option that if you're looking to pay down your debt faster, it might make sense to grab.
Right. But I think the point I'm trying to make is before you grab a second job, try to invest in maximizing out your primary job first, because the thing is that you only have so much energy. So it's like, so if you can put your energy into getting a higher return at your primary thing, it would be better than having two, one job that's okay and one job that's just what in a second side hustle that's whatever. Then you
Yeah.
have two high performing jobs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's kind of like if someone's getting started. So if someone um is is paying debt always the safest option, or can you kind of explain the differences between like paying off debt and investing and what those opportunity costs are?
Well, I think, we touched on it a little bit earlier. So it's like, how much interest are you paying on the debt? So if we just do just a very simple math thing, like imagine if you have $3,000 on a credit card, and, on a light credit card, interest rates will probably be somewhere between 15 to 18%. And so then if you have $3,000 in a brokerage account, and it's invested in the S&P 500, all of it, or it's in, whatever your favorite stock is, sometimes you could get lucky and the stock could outperform. But if it's just in the S&P 500, like the dollar a day investment strategy that we're doing in SCHB on a different YouTube video we have, over a year, that stock SCHB, which is a Schwab broad market fund, returns it was like 6.8%. So if you have $3,000 on a credit card that's getting 18%, which is probably more like getting 22, 25%, and then you have $3,000 getting 6.8%, the debt on the credit card's outperforming the investment. And so it's like you're actually making money in theory if you paid off the credit card first, because you're spending less money that year in interest. And so I think,
Hmm.
knowing the interest point is really important.
Yeah.
Like knowing how
And how,
much you're paying in interest.
yeah, and how much that's costing you each month by
Right.
not paying
What
it
is
off.
the opportunity cost for that?
Yeah, and can you make that much in the stock market or
Or,
however
or, or
else?
whatever, types of level that you're
Yeah.
investing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, let's also say that whatever field you work in, you have $3,000 on a credit card, and then you can either pay that off with the $3,000 cash you have, or you're able to go with the $3,000, you're able to go to a conference where you're going to learn from industry experts, and the knowledge you're going to get from this conference over the course of this weekend is going to help you do a whole bunch of stuff in your career that's going to take your career and your earning potential to a different level. Now, is the 22, now what's the percentage on that versus the other?
Yeah, well,
So
it's harder to
you're right.
quantify that,
You're right. And so,
I think.
but I mean, if let's just say you had the $3,000 to do that, or let's say that cost $5,000, that would probably be a good investment, because that's going to up your earning potential and just up your whole career thing, because that, so it's like, what that opportunity has a great, you figure what the output for what you're going to get the return on that is going to be much higher. So I think it's just trade-offs.
Yeah. So how would you guide someone in making a decision like that?
I mean, I would really, I think in any time we're talking to someone, it's really, what's most important to them. Because you could have somebody who you're talking to about debt, and they're like, hey, I have this debt and it is stressing me out. I can't sleep at night. And
Yeah.
so then at that point, the opportunity cost isn't as important, like, because everybody has different things about their finances that bother them on different levels. And
Yeah.
so, if you're talking to somebody and they're just like, hey, this stresses me out so much, it's affecting my sleep, it's just affecting just how I operate. Like, I can't think about anything. This is overwhelming. Well, then, I wouldn't say, hey, this is only the debt you have is only at 3%. You're tripping. I'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
if it's bothering you that much, then why don't you go ahead and make sure, let's come up with a plan to pay it off.
Yeah.
And so I
So
think
like
it's
on a
also understanding, how is this affecting that person?
yeah, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you about this debt versus getting your money invested, or even
Right.
just the debt period? And then wherever they are on that scale, if it's pretty high, I think we've had conversations with a couple people like this where it was like, hey, well, you're making good money. You could, put this here, put this here. And it was like, no, this debt is stressing me out too much. I want it done. And I think they ended up having like 2, 3 jobs to pay it down.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
was
So
what was kind of bringing them peace at the moment. And so I think there is a level of sentiment that can be a marker or a measure for how you prioritize what you're doing when it comes to paying off debt versus investing versus doing both. Like if you feel comfortable doing both and you feel at peace to a certain extent, that's not a bad marker, because ultimately your finances are either bringing you stress or some sort of frustration, and you want to solve that and relieve that stress, so you're taking actions towards doing that, or you're doing okay with where you're at and you want to kind of just put your put some in the vesting, some towards debt, etc. It just depends on where you're at and how you feel.
yeah, and I think there's something to be said too, like, when you start investing earlier, you have the money in the market for longer. So then it also, it has more time to compound as well. So, there, I want to stress that every situation is unique and there is no right or wrong answer. It's, what's most important to you. Because at the end of the day, this, this is your show, when you're doing it, it's like your life, this is how you want to do it. And so it's like, how somebody else might do theirs would be different than how you may want to do yours. Of course, having less debt is generally always better, because, there's like, it's an opportunity cost. And there was this one James Clear. I wish I would have pulled it up. I don't even know if I could find it, because I get his Thursday emails. I've been getting them for years, and so it seems like I got it 3 years ago, but it could have been 5 years ago. But he was talking about the importance of saying yes and no, and he was like, when you say no, you have opportunity. You keep your opportunities open, but when you say yes to something, you close all of your other opportunities. And so it's like, because you're now saying yes to that. And it's like, when you say yes to debt, especially if it's not some sort of debt that's connected to an investment, or even if it is, sometimes you're now closing down options to other things, such as, like, I've met people who have bought houses, and they're like, hey, this doesn't happen with everybody, but they're like, hey, I bought this house. My mortgage is very expensive. So now I'm saying no to possibly going on vacation and other things for a while, because I need to be able to maintain this thing.
Yeah.
And so, so you just, or, when you say yes to getting married, you're saying no to everyone else. And so, So
Hopefully.
a yes is a no. And
Yeah.
so in some context, so it's just like when you say yes to debt, you're saying no,
It's something else.
you're likely giving a trade-off to something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So what's a common mistake that you see people try to make in this decision when they're doing it on their own?
Um, just like when they're going through paying off debt
Or
or trying to
trying
invest.
to decide what to do with their money and how
A
to
common
allocate it.
mistake I see people do with this, and this is like, oh man, I don't know if I want to pay off this debt, so I'm gonna hire this company. They're gonna negotiate this debt on my behalf, and help me get out of it. Or this debt consolidation company just said, hey, I'll consolidate all your debts, and then you just pay me. That's a common mistake I see all the time, and I'm like, I don't know if that was really better. Like when you look at the interest rate plus what they have you wrapped in, then they're like, oh yeah, you just pay one lump sum to us and then we'll make sure we get it. And it's like anytime somebody is working to consolidate, keep in mind every lender, what is their job? Is to
To get
lend
paid.
money and to make
Yeah.
money. They're there to get paid. So you want to really understand how they're getting paid and what's happening.
Can you say more about the details of that trap? Because I'm not sure I know what you're talking about because we have a client who went through something like that, but can you expand on what happens
Well, I mean, it's just
when
like,
people are
like,
in
well,
debt?
this is different from, so it's like, imagine if you have like 3 credit cards or 5 credit cards, or however many you have more than
Okay.
one. And, and they have varying interest rates. There are some times where you have these debt consolidation places and they'll be like, oh, we'll we'll buy out all your credit cards and we'll
Mhm.
give you an aggregate interest payment. We'll kind of, I don't know if they figure out what your average interest rate is. I don't exactly know how they do the thing that they do. Then they
Mhm.
say you just pay us one lump sum a month and then we'll, you for this amount of months and you get out. And it sounds good the way they pitch it, but I don't always feel like it works that well on the back end.
Okay.
And sometimes, especially sometimes if one of these accounts has been delinquent or just, once again, when you say yes to this, you say no to something else. And so, one of my things that I always like to do, especially because it's like, is there a way to pay off one card and then possibly get with the credit union and do about 0% balance transfer
Yeah.
where you can get an introductory rate where you're paying 0%, and you roll it over for like 12 months and then roll it over to another one, so I mean, that's something that I'm always interested in before I, kind of do one of these debt consolidation
Because
things.
you're still it's basically still a loan and you're still paying
Right.
interest
And you're
on
still
it.
paying an interest payment and they got you locked in.
And it's yeah, interesting. So there's different things to look there's different loopholes to look for in that
Yeah.
scenario
Once
where
again, everybody's situation is different. Somebody might not be able to do what I'm trying to talk about because they don't have good credit. So, I mean, obviously,
right.
you have to have credit. Then also you could be in so much debt where, you can't get any more credit extended to you. And so it's just it just kind of,
It depends.
everything is different. But I would say, if somebody were in a lot of debt and they were like, hey, I would like to get some help with this, I would say, reach out to somebody who is a credit counselor, reach out to a couple different people, get on the internet, ask Chat GPT, what are some of my options,
Yeah.
Google some different, look up some different Reddit threads and just do some great research and then make an informed decision. You just don't want to listen
Yeah.
to one person or one thing, one YouTube video and make a decision. I would say, do some research and then so you can make an informed decision.
Well,
Also, if
and
you
that
need some real help, book call below. We have a
yeah.
link. We can,
Yeah.
we can at least send you in the, in a direction of,
And one thing, I mean, I know, people are all over the fence on AI and ChatGPT and all this stuff, but one thing I can say is if you have some of the basic knowledge that Gabe was talking about, like, how much debt you have, what your interest payments are. I mean, put that into ChatGPT and ask it to
right.
create a
Well,
debt
you know
repayment
what
plan.
that is because just pull up every statement. I believe they're required to tell you.
Yeah,
Can't think of
it's on
any
the
credit card
statement.
that I've gotten that where it's like it'll tell you, hey, if you pay this off, if you don't pay this off this month, this is the amount of interest you're going to get, and then they'll tell you year to date interest generally at the bottom of the statement. This is how much interest you paid in 2025 or whatever
Yeah,
year it
and
is.
And ask it to help you build a debt repayment plan and maybe, put in some of your other goals that you have and see what it comes up with. I mean, we're using ChatGPT for everything. I mean, you've built yourself a couple learning plans on things that you're really interested in learning.
Yeah, I sure did.
Um, we're using it for all sorts of stuff. So if you're gonna use it for something and you're, scared of the math equations or you're not comfortable, like I'm that person. I mean, honestly, the percentages, all that stuff is not something that comes naturally to me. I'm a people person through and through. And so even pulling some of that stuff up, putting the interest in there, putting the amounts, like how could I really pay this off? Here's my income. This is what I net every month. How can I create a budget that will balance this out and help me still be able to have some breathing room to have some fun? I mean, it might be a miracle what comes out of there, and it could be super helpful and create some clarity. So kind of highly recommend that. If you
Absolutely.
want a second set of eyes on it, someone who's a finance professional, I'd definitely book a call with Gabe. But just to confirm that those numbers are actually right and appropriate, because AI definitely makes mistakes, but it might give you a good starting place and some clarity about what seems realistic and doable for you. So,
Right.
anything else on that point?
No, I think that's good, a solid place to get started.
Cool. So, what advice, or how would you change the advice for someone who's single versus married with kids?
Well, I mean, of course, when you're single, you're over all of your finances, so you get to do whatever it is you want to do. When you're married, you still could be over all of your finances too, so
Right.
that it becomes tricky. And so it's like, do you guys have shared finances or do you have split finances? And I know couples who do both. And so, but the issue is that depending on how you guys split your finances, then also when one person's in debt, and then so maybe that person's not able to carry the same amount of burden because they're in some sort of debt. And especially if that debt connected to the relationship, is it not connected to the relationship,
Hmm.
it can turn into all kinds of things. So the best thing to do is when you're in a relationship is to do your best to be on the same page with your partner. And so
Okay.
we do have a PDF on that, on like some questions to start a money conversation with your partner, and it can work as just what we call
Facilitation
it, like
guide.
a third party, a neutral third party that is
Yeah.
just guiding you through some questions to to start a conversation. But that's having those types of conversations can be complicated when the finances aren't shared, or when they are shared but somebody is accruing or has accrued more debt. Yeah, it can make things complicated. And so I definitely, the best thing you can do is find out a good way to communicate about that. Make sure find a way to have shared goals and find a path that you guys can travel down together to move forward.
Yeah. That you both feel confident in,
Yeah.
for sure. So what role does mindset play in this conversation?
I mean, mindset is everything, when it comes to finances, because it's like, the numbers are just the numbers, but it's like, you have to have the mindset to stick to it. And so it's like, what is the hardest thing when you think about working out? Is it the workouts, or is it the mindset to keep showing up? I mean, the mindset to
Yeah.
keep showing up, likely, when it's
Yeah.
Saturday and you want to hit the snooze button, or when it's cold outside, or when it's hot outside, or when you're hungry, or all of the things. And so,
Yeah.
the same thing is it was with finances, especially when we're talking about paying off debt, because paying off debt, and as somebody who's had to pay off debt before, it feels a lot different than especially when it's something that you've already spent, than paying off a debt towards, oh, I financed this vacation. Like, for instance, like we were going to go on a cruise later on this year. And so last year we had signed up for the cruise, and they were like, hey, you sign up for the cruise, you pay 200. And then, you have to just have the rest of it. Let's say it's like $5,000. You have to have the rest of it paid off by August. And then the cruise is in November. That feels a lot different than when you're paying off a $5,000 cruise, and you already been on the cruise, took the pictures, drank the drinks, had all the fun. And now it's like, oh, I got this bill I still need to pay,
That's
and
right.
so paying it off after the fact feels different. And that's where the mindset and the focus takes, because it's like, hey, I'm working every day for this money. And now every day for this money that I'm getting, I'm have to paying for something that already has happened.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel as good.
Right. as
Yeah, so
when
you gotta need
you're,
mindset to stay locked in on that. I mean, once again, that's why it feels different. Paying off credit card debt likely feels different than making your mortgage payment, which is also a form of paying off debt, because it's like, hey, you're living in that house, you're enjoying it. Whatever you bought on that credit card, especially if that credit card debt that went on for 2 3 years, those shoes ain't not as crispy as they used to be. That
that's
jacket's
right.
not as smooth. It's another one that you already done saw that Nordstrom then emailed you to sell, and you're like, man, I need this one too.
Yeah. So it's I mean, we're almost thinking like you have to think twice before you swipe almost. Like,
Right.
do I want to be paying this
Absolutely. I
off
mean, a good
later?
rule, yeah, a good rule is, you can give yourself a 24 or 48-hour rule. It's like, hey, when you see something that you're not planning on spending on anyway, it's like, hey, I need to give myself 24 hours. I need to give myself 48 hours to, make sure that this is the right decision for me in this
Yeah.
moment.
I,
And so, because so many times people get caught up in the moment, and then it's like, for what, you
yeah.
know?
My newest thing, because I know online shopping can get the best of people, especially with like TikTok shops. They make it so easy for you to just like pay with one click. The newest thing, unless it's something that I'm like repeat buy all the time, like I have a skincare company that I buy from her all the time. I don't have to think twice about the stuff that I buy there. But anything else that I'm getting targeted on Instagram, I have like a 24 to 48-hour rule. I put it in the cart. And if I still am thinking about it 24 to 48 hours later, it goes into like a different category in my mind. Like, is this something that I really need, or do I still want it, or like is it just something that I want and it's there? So I kind of have a few checks for my online shopping in terms of like how I do it. Like, do I really want to be paying for this now, or is there something that I want more? So just even having that, I think having your goals really clear, and I know we talk about this all the time, but I think will help you in terms of how you actually go about spending your money throughout the month, because you know what your goals are. So if your top priority goal is to pay off some sort of debt, then there's a certain amount going towards that. If you have a goal to pay off debt and invest at the same time, and you have some clarity about how much that is, I think that just helps you execute on those goals versus having like the fuzzy, not so clear goals.
Absolutely. I mean, bought I just bought a hat, but I've been looking at this hat for like 2 3 months online. It was a Oakland A's has a baseball hat, but I looked at it and then finally I was like, oh, it's going on sale. They're probably getting rid of these for this season, and so I bought it, but but it was something initially I saw and I'm like, oh, should I get this? But then I was like, you know what, let me just sit on that for a while. And so I think, the more you get tuned in with your finances, the more that you update your budget on a regular basis, you know how much money you have in your bank account, you know how much money you have coming in and going out. It makes it easier to be able to make a quicker decision on like, yes, I do want this, I do need it. And then it also just sometimes you're just like, you know what? I don't really want this. I could easily go do something else and be much happier.
Yeah. So I'm going to just kind of like round this out because we're getting towards the end of our time. But what, in terms of like this question of what should someone do first, if someone is still feeling unsure, what is 1, 2 steps that you might suggest someone take?
I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but I'm just gonna say if you feel unsure on what to do, go through a goal setting exercise. We just dropped a YouTube video yesterday, and I talk about it. It takes about I explain it in 30 seconds, so I won't take the time here. Or I think I said it on last week's call. Or I can take the time very quickly. It's just get some flashcards. However many goals you have, write one goal per flashcard. So if you have 20 goals, you're going to need 20 flashcards. Write each goal on there. On the back of each goal's flashcard, write out two to three things you're going to need to do to accomplish that goal, and then put all 20, if you have 20 goals or however many goals you have for flashcards, put all of the flashcards in order of importance. Start with number one. You can possibly work on up to the first top three, depending on if they're not conflicting with one another. But the first thing to do is just figure out, hey, what are we trying to do here? And then move forward from there.
So getting clear on your goals is number one.
It's always number one, no matter what it is. I mean, if you sit down at work, what's the first thing you're going to do? What's the most important thing to do? Tomorrow morning, I mean, today's Sunday. tomorrow's Monday. When I sit down at my desk tomorrow, what is the most important? Like, I'm going to have a list of the things I want to get done, but they're going to be in order of importance because there's some stuff that I'm likely not going to get done, but it's going to be at a lower point on the list.
Yeah.
Money is so much more important because it's like, hey, you only have so much of it. So what is the most important that you really want to accomplish with this money?
Right. And then weighing in terms of debt versus investing, weighing the opportunity cost versus the returns.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else?
Do you want to take some questions? See if there's any questions in the chat.
We can. Yeah. Does anyone watching have any questions about paying off debt or investing that you want us to answer?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. While we're waiting to see if anybody wants to tap in, but it's like it reminds me of the Reese's commercials. Like, there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's,
That's
but
right.
but of course, it's like you eat too many Reese's, you can be in trouble.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, you can start to feel it in that waistline. And so it's
Right.
like, there's when you're tackling debt, is there a right way or wrong way to do it? I mean, of course, that you want to get out of debt as quickly as you can. I believe the Bible is really on target when it says the borrower is slave to the lender. I mean, when you owe someone money, when you owe, especially like, don't be owing like the IRS or somebody like that. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, or you owe the government or student loans. But it's just like, I think that there's multiple ways to come up with a strategy that works for you. And I think that's what's really important is you have to find out what works for you so that you can stick to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you say to someone who's been taught to not invest until they're debt free? Is that always true?
I mean, so I feel like somebody like that though is like, if that's what they've been taught, they're likely going to be very nervous about investing too. Probably not going to be excited about it. I remember, I once had this thought I once was talking to someone, a good friend of mine, who was a coworker at one job I had, and they were telling me, they told me that over a year they saved like $20,000, and that was kind of like their base that they had in their checking account. Like, like they don't like that was like their bottom number. Like they didn't want to have to go below 20K. And I was like, man, that is awesome. And so I was like, I want to do something like that. I was like, oh, 20K feels a bit hefty. I was like, I'm gonna do 10K. And so I'm like, I'm not going to invest until I save 10K. And so I just was like, I wanted to save 10K. And so I opened up this account but then I wasn't, but I was still struggling to get to the full 10K because I would go up, then some would come down. You know how it's like this would happen, then that would happen. But then, eventually I was like, you know what? I'm going to start putting some money into this account because this is going to go towards my 10K. Because one thing I realized is that, for me, when I put money into the investment account and then when I bought a stock, I wasn't pulling that money back out. So the money wasn't going anywhere once I did that. Like, it was going to stay locked in. And so,
Yeah.
whereas the money that was in my checking account, it could be negotiable that if my credit card bill was higher, I was going to, pay, I'd have to pay a little bit more out of my checking account. So if my credit card bill
Yeah.
ran 2-3 grand more than that month, I'd take that money that I had saved and pay off the credit card bill. I'm not pulling any money out of my brokerage account. I'm not selling anything to pull out of there. So all of a sudden,
Yeah.
the money I started putting in there, it just stayed
Yeah. So for
and
you,
it started growing.
that was like the mental
Right.
hoop that you needed to keep it in there.
Yeah. And I wish I would have had this realization earlier. I would have likely had more money saved just because once I put the money in there, I'm not selling out of an investment position. I'm gonna have to do something else. And so, because I was just so connected, like this money's making me money. Why am I going to get rid of it? And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of like just something that happened with me that I wish I would have just been a little bit more hard lined on earlier.
Yeah. Just investing it before, like, it almost was an artificial rule for you
Right.
that
Yeah, it
it,
was a totally artificial rule. And the thing is that it's like, but because at the end of the day, it's like the money in the bank was still accessible to me. Whereas I felt like the money that I had in my brokerage account, especially after it was invested, was not accessible to me.
yeah, it
Yeah, it
felt
felt like it was
more,
more locked up. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so just making sure that I think we say this a lot too, is like not to copy someone else's strategy. Like that can lead to a lot of hard times just because what works for someone else may not work for you. And so kind of understanding and trying some stuff out in terms of how does this shake out for me is really helpful uh to grow your money, but also to save, to figure out whether you want to pay off debt or invest first. Because I remember talking to someone about, them paying off their student loans, and they were so stressed out about it. And, had 2, 3 jobs about getting this student loan payment down and they felt like they couldn't really invest in these other things until they had done that. And I just didn't feel the same. I respected this person and where they were coming from and what they were trying to do. But I was like, I just don't feel the same way about that at all. Like mine don't stress me out like that. I might, be in a different situation. I had different, expectations, but I just didn't have the same level of stress. So that strategy just didn't make sense for me. The idea of having 3 jobs made me more stressed out because I've been there, I've done that. So
Right.
I think, being able to discern like it's good advice, but is it good advice for you? And can you carry it forward and be realistic with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. I don't see any comment or questions in
Yeah,
the
I just looked in
chat.
the chat. I don't see we have any questions this week. So yeah, if that's it, we'll wrap a few minutes early. And thank you all for attending Sundays with Steadyworth. Once again, we are looking to grow our channel. We have got, I think we're at like 205 subscribers, and we are trying to break our first 1,000. And we would like to break our first 1,000 in the next couple of months. And we've been looking at the YouTube analytics, and we have seen that 80% of the people who watch our videos are not subscribed. So could you please give us some support? And if you get some value out of this video, make sure you give us a like, get us a subscribe, because we are really working to get this message of financial education and how people can start growing wealth no matter what level they're starting from, and to be more hands-on with their finances out to the world. And the YouTube algorithm loves subscriptions and they love likes, and so do we.
Yes, yes. And just like always, if you watch this and you want a topic for us to cover specifically, please let us know in the comments. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments, and always feel free to reach out to us. I think our email is in our YouTube description, and we'll drop a link to book time with us if you have any questions as well.
Absolutely. So yes,
Awesome.
and then if you don't see it in the description, you can go to our website is steadyworth.com. If you look us up on Google, Steadyworth is one word because it's one vibe. But there's also a thing on our page on our steadyworth.com where you can reach out to us as well to get in contact with us if you have any questions, if you don't see the link below.
Awesome. All right.
All right. Well, we're
Thank
going
you
to
guys
wrap
so
for
much.
today.
Yes.
And we'll
We'll
see
see
you
you next
next
week.
week.